Welcome to my very small camper van. In this video, I will take you through the steps of making a curtain to divide the front section of the van from the sleeping compartment. There's going to be a part 1, which will be making the metal rail to hold up the curtain, and a part 2, which will be about making the curtain itself. The material I'm going to use is metal strapping. It's usually used to tie down heavy material for shipping. The strapping is very springy, but it's easy to bend and it holds its shape once bent. So I can shape it to the contours of the ceiling, and if I do it right, it should press itself up into the ceiling tightly. The first step is going to be make a template of the complicated shape of the ceiling. I plan to use the edge of the plastic trim on the side pillars and this button in the center of the ceiling to hold the rail in place. To make the template, I'm going to use this big piece of cardboard I found, as well as some different sized strips of cardboard, and I'm also going to need a marker and some tape. So you just go along sticking the strips to the cardboard, making sure to follow the shape of the ceiling. In the corner, I'll switch to the smaller pieces to get a close fit with the shape. The last step is to add extra tape just to make sure nothing shifts when you're taking it out. Make sure to mark the edge of the plastic trim as well as the position of the button in the center of the ceiling. Once you have the cardboard template, the first step is to trace it onto some heavy cardstock and cut it out so you can go back to the van and double check the fit. This looks pretty good, except for here in the middle, so I'm going to add a strip of cardstock to fix that. This is a strapping I found. Be careful with it as it can spring out quite suddenly. As you can see, I can bend it into shape and it's quite springy. I've traced my template onto this board and I've added a nail to hold the hook that I've bent onto the end. Working slowly, I can bend the basic shape with my hands. To make the ends that hook onto the edge of the plastic trim on the pillars, I need to make a series of bends. This first bend is the part that will be on the outside of the plastic. If you're trying to do this, I suggest making some practice bends with the material and noting how far from your pliers the actual bend winds up. This one I'm going to squeeze completely flat. The second bend is for the part that will slip between the plastic trim and the material of the ceiling. This part will have to be open enough to fit over the plastic trim. To leave that gap, I'm going to use this drill bit as a spacer. And then I'm going to bend the rest of the strapping back so as to follow the other bends. The challenge is that the rail needs to be made in one piece, so the bends at each end need to be exactly the right distance from the middle. Once I have the first hook the way I want it, I'm going to measure it against the template and then mark the length for the second hook. This first version is too long and I can't get it to follow the ceiling. But by holding it up tight to the ceiling all the way along, I can measure how much shorter the next one needs to be. Once I've made the first hook on the new rail, I can then use the first version to check the length. I'm going to mark where the other bend will go and then subtract that distance I measured earlier to get the new length. Now I can make the other hook. This one seems a pretty good fit, which is good since I don't have another piece of strapping right now. I can probably fine-tune the bending to improve some gaps, but the overall length is good. The curtain can be as simple as this, a square of lightweight black fabric held up by magnets. You could use some clamps to hold it to the grab bar near the sliding door, and that way you wouldn't get any gaps on the side. Here's my finished curtain. I bought the minivan so I could feel free to make more permanent modifications, but somehow I'm still hesitant to screw anything into the van or to cut holes in it. So the rail system used the existing structure of the van to hold up the curtain, so it would be suitable for a van you can't or don't want to modify. I'm quite pleased with the results, but be aware, since it's only held by the center and by the edges, it's not super strong. It can only hold a lightweight curtain, and if you yank on it, the rail will bend down. But if you want a discrete curtain system and don't want to modify the van, then this should be a good technique. In part 2, I'm going to show you how I'm going to make a pattern for that curtain and how I sew it together.